Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever felt like you're aiming for those big revenue goals, but your sales team just can't seem to get them?
You are definitely not alone.
We are taking a deep dive today into the world of building those top performing sales teams.
And trust me.
It's going to be much more in depth than just your typical advice session.
Exactly.
We're going to really go deep and break down insights from a discussion between sales experts Dr. Ari Masudi and Darius Lahudafard.
What really stood out to me in their discussion was the focus on new B2B sales managers. It can be incredibly tough transitioning from being an individual contributor to suddenly leading an entire team. It's like being thrown in the deep end.
Exactly. We're going to give you the tools and knowledge to not only stay afloat, but really thrive.
And think of this deep dive as your toolkit to succeed. We're going to unpack everything from how to absolutely nail the hiring process to onboarding those new team members, all the way to keeping those star players engaged and always striving for more.
And we'll even be looking at some really eye-opening examples along the way.
Like, did you know?
Yeah.
Google uses a structured interview process that's specifically designed to predict how much potential for growth a candidate has. It's way more than just checking off boxes. They're looking at the bigger picture.
Wow.
Then you have Zappos. They're obviously famous for their amazing company culture. And their 4-week onboarding program is legendary. It's basically a masterclass on how to truly integrate new employees and make them feel like they're part of the team from the very first day.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's start with hiring. So the source material talks about this tech startup that pretty much hired anyone who seemed like a good person based only on gut feeling.
Like just a handshake and a good feeling.
Exactly. But guess what?
Total disaster. They ended up with a whole sales team full of people who were very enthusiastic, but just completely ineffective at selling.
Yeah.
It just highlights how risky it is to only rely on your gut when you're making hiring decisions.
I totally understand the appeal of going with your gut, but do you think there's a way to balance intuition with a more structured approach? Oh, absolutely. You can definitely use intuition and still have a structured process for hiring. Think of it like this.
Right.
Intuition can be super helpful for noticing those harder to qualities,
Yeah.
like drive and how well someone fits with your culture. But you also need a solid system to look at skills and potential and assess them objectively.
Gotcha. So that's where the structured approach comes in. So can you paint a picture of what a truly effective structured process actually looks like?
Think about Google. They're all about using these behavioral questions that are designed to dig into past behavior.
Okay.
Because past behaviors can really predict how someone will perform in the future. For example, they might ask a candidate something like, tell me about a time you had to win over a client who was very skeptical. What was your strategy and what ended up happening?
Oh, wow.
This really goes beyond just looking at what skills someone listed on their resume.
Yeah.
It actually lets you see real-world experiences and how that candidate thinks and acts under pressure. It's like you get this little sneak peek into how they solve problems and handle those curveballs that always seem to pop up at sales.
Exactly. And then you have these case studies,
Okay.
which Google uses to see how strategic a candidate is and how well they can solve problems. They'll give the candidate a realistic business situation.
Okay.
It could be like a really challenging sales target or a complicated problem with a client.
Oh, wow.
And they ask the candidate to come up with an action plan.
That's a great idea.
It's a great way to see how well they analyze information, how creative their solutions are, and how well they can think on their feet.
Okay, so you have this amazing structured interview process in place.
Yeah.
You've attracted some awesome people.
Yeah.
You've made your decision about who to hire. Now what?
Onboarding.
Oh,
This is really where things can make or break your new team.
yeah.
Our source material painted a pretty depressing picture of this one financial services firm
Okay.
that basically just threw their new hires into the deep end and said, sink or swim. No real structure, no guidance, no support.
I bet they had a lot of people quit.
You guessed it. They lost tons of talented people simply because they didn't invest in making onboarding a good experience. It took their new hires forever to actually become productive
Yeah.
because they were basically left to figure everything out completely on their own.
Okay, so let's talk about what good onboarding looks like. I immediately think of Zappos again. They have that famous 4-week program, right?
Exactly. At Zappos, every new hire spends 4 full weeks totally immersed in the company culture.
Wow.
They learn everything about the business, connect with colleagues, and get a real sense of what it's like to be a part of the Zappos family.
And I bet they give them the knowledge and tools they need to actually be successful in their role. goals.
Yeah.
It's more than just welcome to the team. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
here's how you can actually thrive here.
Absolutely. And that makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
I bet their new hires really feel valued and supported, which probably leads to everyone having higher morale and being more productive right from the start.
I love that. It's like launching a rocket.
Yeah,
You need the right fuel and the right guidance to actually reach orbit.
exactly.
Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about building a team with a lot of diversity. The source material really emphasizes that diversity is critical for innovation and for being able to adapt.
Right.
They even compare it to guerrilla fighters versus a traditional army. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's such a great comparison. A team that's very homogenous,
Yeah.
kind of like a rigid army, might perform really well in a stable and predictable environment.
Yeah.
But when things get chaotic,
Uh-huh.
like when the market changes unexpectedly,
Yeah.
they won't have the flexibility and the diverse range of perspectives to be able to adapt and thrive.
So basically what you're saying is that a diverse sales team is more like a group of those guerrilla fighters. They're resourceful, adaptable, and quick on their feet.
Right. And the source material has this cautionary tale about a sales manager who was convinced that a degree from a top business school was a guarantee of success.
Okay.
So he only hired people from his alma mater.
Oh boy. Talk about an echo chamber. What happened?
Exactly what you'd think. The team had almost no diversity in thought or experience.
Mm-hmm.
They all came from very similar backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
had similar views, and approached problems in pretty much the same way. So when the market changed and what clients needed evolved, they couldn't keep up.
Oh no.
Their sales really tanked.
Wow, that's a tough lesson to learn. So how do you actually build a more diverse sales team?
It all starts with realizing that we all have unconscious bias. Even when we have the best intention, those biases can affect our decision.
Yeah.
One way to deal with this is to use blind resume screening.
Okay, so you're talking about taking out identifying info like names in school
Exactly.
and even gender from resumes during that initial screening.
Exactly. It's all about making things more objective.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's not just about screening. You also have to actually go out and look for people from lots of different backgrounds.
Oh.
That means expanding beyond just the usual channels for recruiting.
So not just relying on people you know or the typical job boards, but actively going out and finding organizations that are all about diversity in the workforce.
Exactly. Partnering with groups like that can really help you find a much wider pool of talent and bring in all these fresh perspectives that you might have missed otherwise.
And it's not just about checking off boxes.
Right.
It's about creating a team that genuinely reflects the diversity of your customers and the world as a whole. So you've built this diverse, high-performing team. How do you actually keep those talented people engaged and motivated?
That's where retention comes in. And it's a constant challenge, not something you do just once. The source material mentions this marketing agency that was losing employees left and right because they just didn't offer any opportunities for growth. Everyone felt stuck, underappreciated, and like their careers were going nowhere.
Ouch. Feeling stuck is the death of wanting to stay. People really want to learn and grow and see a path for their career.
Exactly.
If they don't see that path with their current company, they're going to go look for it somewhere else.
Right. And that's where companies like Patagonia really get it right. They're known for having really high employee retention.
Okay.
And it's largely because they have extensive training programs and clear paths for your career. They put a lot of effort into helping their employees develop, and they give them tons of chances to grow, both professionally and personally.
They know that investing in their employees is a win-win situation.
Yeah.
It's good for morale, it's good for productivity, and ultimately it leads to employees being more loyal.
It's all about building a culture where people feel like they matter, they feel challenged,
Yeah.
but also supported in their growth.
Okay, so my question for you is, what Patagonia-like opportunities can you actually create for your own team? How can you help people reach their full potential and feel genuinely excited about their future at your company?
That's a great question.
So speaking of tools for growth, let's talk about technology.
Yeah.
I think we all know what it feels like to be overwhelmed with all the technology there.
The source material talks about this super common scenario where sales teams are drowning in all these tools, and yet they don't see any real improvement in the productivity. They give an example of a logistics company where the sales team just kept requesting more and more tech, but the results weren't getting any better.
It's like they had all the bells and whistles, but no idea how to actually play.
Exactly. It's all about being strategic with how you use tech. Salesforce is a great example. They're known for having very cutting-edge technology.
Yeah.
But they don't just hand you the keys and wish you luck. They have really comprehensive training programs that go beyond the basics of just using their CRM.
So what kind of training are we talking about here?
They offer really in-depth training modules on topics like
Okay.
lead qualification, pipeline management, and using data analytics within the platform.
Wow.
This really empowers salespeople to not just manage contacts and deals, but to truly understand data and use it to make smarter decisions.
So it's like giving someone a Ferrari and then teaching them how to race it like a pro.
Precisely. It's all about giving them the tools and the knowledge to actually use them to their full potential.
So I guess the big question is, are you giving your team the right tools and the knowledge to use those tools effectively? Or are they just struggling to keep up with all this new tech they don't even really understand?
It's easy to get distracted by all this shiny new technology, but you need to take a step back and figure out if it's actually what your team needs and if you're giving them the training and support they need to use it the right way. So we've covered hiring, onboarding, diversity, retention, and technology.
That's a lot.
What's next?
What's next on the agenda for our deep dive?
We're going to talk about company culture. We know that Southwest Airlines looks for cultural fit when they hire people, but how do you build a really strong company culture once you've got your team in place? It's one thing to hire people who fit the culture, but it's another thing entirely to cultivate a really positive and thriving culture.
It's kind of like tending a garden, isn't it? You have to nurture it, get rid of the weeds, and create the right conditions for everything to grow.
That's a great way to put it. And just like a garden, company culture needs constant attention and care.
Yeah.
It doesn't just magically appear on its own.
So what are some of the most important things for building a really strong and positive company culture?
I think leadership is absolutely crucial. Leaders set the tone and the overall environment.
Yeah.
Need to embody the company's values and really lead by example.
It's not just about talking the talk. It's about walking the walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Leaders have to really live the culture they're trying to create. And it's also about making sure people have opportunities to connect and work together. Team building activities, social events, volunteer opportunities, all of these can really help create a feeling of community and shared purpose.
It's about creating those water cooler moments, those casual interactions where people build relationships and make connections.
Exactly. And don't underestimate how important it is to communicate clearly. Everyone needs to understand the company's mission, its values, and its goals. Being transparent and having open conversations is crucial for building trust and making people feel like they really own their work.
So it's about making sure everyone is on the same page.
Yeah.
Working towards the same goals and everyone feeling heard and appreciated.
Exactly. And remember, building a strong company culture isn't something that happens overnight. It takes time, effort, and a commitment from everyone on the team.
It's like a journey, not just a destination. So we're just about at the end of part 1 of our deep dive. We've covered so many aspects of building a high-performing sales team, from structured hiring to onboarding, diversity, retention, technology, culture, and promotion.
That's a lot to cover.
It's been quite a journey so far. Yeah. I've learned so much, and I can't wait to see what you have to say in part 2 of our deep dive.
I'm excited to share even more insights and practical strategies with you in the next part, so stay tuned as we continue our exploration of building a high-performing sales team. Welcome back to our deep dive into building a high-performing sales team. I'm so excited to keep going with this conversation and really dig into even more strategies.
It feels like we've already unearthed this amazing treasure trove of insights, but there's still so much more to go.
Right.
It's like we've barely even scratched the surface.
I love that about these deep dives.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn, a different angle to think about. It's just a constant learning process.
Absolutely. So in the first part, we talked about having a structured hiring process, but what does that actually look like in action? Beyond just having some interview questions, what are some concrete things you can do to make sure your hiring process is truly structured?
It's all about having a system, a framework that lets you evaluate each candidate in a consistent way against a specific set of criteria. It's like a roadmap for success.
Yeah.
This helps you eliminate bias and make sure you're basing your hiring decisions on real data, not just your gut feeling.
So it's about taking the emotion out of it and using data to drive those decisions.
Right.
But how do you actually figure out what those criteria should be? What makes up a truly structured hiring process?
The very first thing you have to do is to find the specific skills and qualities that are absolutely essential for success in that role.
Okay.
And this goes way beyond just technical skills.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out those less tangible things,
Okay.
like resilience, empathy, and the ability to connect with people.
So it's not just what they know.
Right.
It's about how they deal with people, how they handle tough situations, and how they approach problems.
Exactly.
What?
Once you've figured out those core skills and qualities, then you have to design interview questions and assessments that specifically target those things.
Yeah.
That's where the behavioral questions and case studies we talked about before.
Can you give us a few more examples? I'm really interested in using behavioral questions to try to predict how someone will perform.
Sure. Let's say you really need someone who can adapt to anything and can handle a super fast-paced environment.
Okay.
You can ask something like, tell me about a time you had to totally change your sales strategy in the middle of everything because something unexpected happened. What did you do and how did it turn out? That kind of question shows you how well someone can think on their feet, adapt their approach, and still get things done even when things go off the rails.
It's like you're giving them a little test drive of the job.
Right.
You get to see how they handle the kind of real-world challenges that pop up all the time.
Exactly. Case studies are really helpful too. They let you look at problem-solving skills and strategic thinking in a more controlled setting. You might give someone a situation like, you're in charge of breaking into a totally new market segment. How would you tackle this, and what are the key metrics you'd use to see how you're doing?
I love that. It really makes them think critically, come up with a plan, and explain their reasoning.
Right. You're not just looking for someone who has the right answers.
Yeah.
You want to see how their minds.
And it's not just about finding people who have the most skills.
Right.
It's about finding people who have the potential to learn and grow, who really want to learn new, develop.
You want people who are eager to learn, are open to feedback, and are always trying to get better.
Exactly. And that takes us back to onboarding.
Yep.
We talked about Zappos and their really immersive 4-week program, but there are so many other ways to make onboarding great.
Right.
It's not one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key things to remember when you're designing an onboarding program?
Right.
What are the must-have? The first thing is that onboarding shouldn't just be about paperwork and introduction. It's about setting your new employees up to succeed by giving them the tools, the knowledge, and the support.
It's about creating an environment that's welcoming and supportive, where people feel comfortable asking questions and learning.
Exactly. You want them to feel like they're already part of the team right away, not like outsiders trying to find their way in.
And you also want to make sure they understand the company culture.
Right.
And how their job fits into the bigger picture, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to give them a sense of purpose and show them that their work matters.
Right.
And that it contributes to the overall success of the company.
It's not just teaching them how to do the job.
Right.
It's about making them feel connected to the company's mission, values.
Exactly. And don't forget about mentorship. It can be so helpful to pair new hires with experienced team members.
It gives them someone they can go to for help, advice, and support, someone who can help them navigate the challenges of those first few days.
It's like having a built-in buddy system. Someone who can show them the ropes, answer their questions, and make them feel more at ease.
And of course, feedback is important. Regular check-ins and performance reviews are key to making sure new hires are on track and getting the support they need.
It's about creating a constant feedback loop, not just waiting for those yearly reviews.
Yeah, the more often you give feedback, the better. It lets new hires adjust course, change their approach, and really develop their skills more effectively.
Right. Now, let's talk about diversity again.
Okay.
We've already said that it's super important for being innovative and adaptable.
Yeah.
But how do you actually create a more diverse team? It's easy to say it's important, but it's a whole other thing to actually make it happen.
That's the truth. It's not always easy, but it's something we absolutely have to do.
Right. The first step is acknowledging that we all have unconscious bias. Whether we realize it or not, those biases can influence our decisions.
So you're saying that even when we're trying to do the right thing, we might be making choices based on things that have nothing to do with whether someone is qualified for the job? Exactly. It's human nature. But we can lessen the impact of these biases by doing things like using blind resume screening, like we talked about before.
Right. Taking out identifying information from resumes makes you focus on skills and experience, not on things like gender, race, or where someone went to school.
Exactly. And it's not just about screening either. You also have to actively search for candidates from diverse backgrounds.
Okay.
That means going beyond the traditional ways of recruiting.
So not just referrals and job boards, but actually going out and finding organizations that are all about diversity in the workforce.
Exactly. Working with those groups can help you find a much bigger pool of talent and bring in new perspectives that you might have otherwise overlooked.
And it's not just about hitting some quota. It's about creating a team that truly reflects how diverse your customers are and the world we live in.
Okay, so now you've built this amazing, diverse, high-performing team. How do you keep those talented people happy and engaged? Retention is a huge problem for so many companies.
Yeah.
What are some strategies for making sure your top performers are fulfilled?
Retention is something you have to be working on constantly, and you need to be proactive about. It's not something you could just set up and forget about.
Gotcha.
You have to keep thinking about how to keep your employees engaged, motivated, and feeling like they're valued.
So what are some practical steps to take? What makes a good retention strategy?
Giving regular feedback and showing appreciation is huge. People need to know that their work matters and that you see their hard work.
So it's not just about those yearly reviews.
Yeah.
It's about having a culture where feedback and appreciation are just part of everyday life.
Exactly. And it's not just about praise either. It's about giving constructive criticism and opportunities for people to grow. People want to feel like they're learning new things and getting better, that their careers are moving forward.
It's about helping people figure out what they're good at and where they could and then making sure they have a chance to get better there.
Exactly. Yeah, and career paths don't always have to be a straight line either.
Right.
Sometimes moving sideways can be really valuable for broadening someone's skills and experience.
Yeah, sometimes a sideways move is the best way to get someone ready for a leadership role.
Exactly.
Lets them see things from different angles and develop a wider range of skills.
Yeah.
And don't forget about just having a positive and supportive work environment. People are way more likely to stay at a company where they feel valued, respected, and like they're part of a team.
Right. It's about creating that sense of community and belonging where people feel like they're working towards something bigger than themselves.
Yeah. And you also have to make sure people have opportunities to grow and develop, not just in their careers, but as people.
People want to feel like they're constantly learning and expanding their horizon.
Okay.
Now let's go back to that tech tangle for a minute.
Okay.
We talked about how important it is to provide training along with any new tools. But how do you make sure that training is actually useful? I've been to my fair share of totally pointless training sessions.
I think we've all been there. The key is to make sure the training is relevant, engaging, and designed for what your team specifically needs.
So not just a generic one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It has to be specific to the tools you're implementing and the problems your team is facing.
Right. And it should be hands-on and interactive too.
Yeah.
People learn by doing, not just by sitting and listening to a lecture.
Absolutely. Give people a chance to actually apply what they're learning in real-world situations.
Right.
Let them try things out, make mistakes, and learn from their experience.
And don't forget about providing ongoing support. There's nothing worse than feeling lost and alone when you're trying to do something new.
That's the truth.
No.
You need to make sure there are resources available to answer questions, troubleshoot problems, and provide guidance even after the initial training is over.
Exactly. It's about having a culture where learning and support are always happening, where people feel comfortable using the tools and asking for help when they need it.
Okay, so let's go back to company culture.
Yeah.
We know that Southwest Airlines makes cultural fit a priority when they're hiring people, but how do you create a strong company culture once your team is in place? It's one thing to hire people who fit, but it's a whole different challenge to actually cultivate a positive and thriving culture.
It's like you said before, it's like taking care of a garden.
Right.
You have to nurture it, weed out the things that aren't good for it, and create the right conditions for it to grow.
So what are some of the things you need to do to build a company culture that's strong and positive?
The leadership of the company plays a huge role. They set the tone and create the environment. They have to live the company's values and be role models for everyone else.
So it's not enough to just talk about the values. You have to live them.
It's exactly. Leaders have to be the ones who show everyone else what the culture is all about.
Yeah.
You also need to create opportunities for people to connect and collaborate with each other.
Okay.
Things like team building activities, social events, volunteer opportunities, all these things can help create a sense of community and make people feel like they're all working towards the same thing.
It's about creating those informal interactions where people can build relationships and get to know each other better.
Exactly. And don't forget about how powerful clear communication is. Everyone needs to understand the company's mission, value, goal. Transparency and open communication are key for building trust and making people feel like they have a real stake in the company's success.
So it's about making sure everyone is on the same page,
Yeah.
working towards the same goals, and that everyone feels like their voice heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that a strong company culture doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, effort, and commitment from every single person on.
It's a constant journey, not a distance. And speaking of journeys, we're almost at the end of part 2 of our dive. We've explored so many different aspects of building a great sales, from structured hiring to onboarding, diversity, retention, technology, culture, and promotion.
It's a lot.
It's been an incredible journey so far. I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say in the last part of our dive.
I'm excited to wrap things up and share some final thoughts and some actionable strategies with you. Stay tuned for the grand finale of our exploration of building a high-performing sales.
Welcome back to the final part of our dive into building those top performing.
It's been a fantastic journey so far.
Yeah.
Really exploring all the ins and outs of how to build a team that not only meets expectations, but really crushes.
We've covered a ton of ground.
Yeah.
From the super detailed stuff about structured hiring to the power of building a strong company culture.
Absolutely.
And now it's time to tie it all together. To take all these key points and give you some strategies that you can actually put into action right now. So what does it all mean? How do we take everything we've talked about and turn it into a real strategy for building an exceptional sales team?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway from all this is that building a high-performing sales team isn't about finding this one magic trick or secret formula. It's about looking at the whole picture and having an approach that works at every stage.
Okay.
From attracting the best talent to helping them reach their full potential to creating an environment where they can really thrive.
Yeah.
And ultimately hitting those big sales goals.
It's about creating a system, a culture that supports success at every level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it all starts with that structured hiring process we talked about.
Right.
By having clear criteria and using objective assessments, you can make sure you're bringing in people who not only have the right skills,
Yeah.
but also fit in with your company's values and have the potential to grow.
You're looking for those hidden gems
Yep.
who might not stand out in a normal interview, but have that spark, that drive that makes them perfect for your team.
Exactly. And once you found those gems,
Yeah.
it's all about polishing them,
Uh-huh.
nurturing their talents to a solid onboarding program that sets them up for success.
Onboarding is so crucial.
Yeah.
It's where you really lay the groundwork for a long and successful relationship with your new employees.
You immerse them in the company culture, you give them the tools and the knowledge they need, and you keep supporting them to make sure they feel confident and valued.
It's about making them feel like they belong.
Exactly.
Like they're part of the family, not just a cog in a machine.
Right. And we can't forget about diversity. It's not just some trendy thing or a box to check off.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential for innovation, for being able to adapt, and ultimately for achieving more success.
It's about building a team that truly represents the world we live in.
Exactly.
A team that can look at challenges from different angles and come up with creative solutions that a team that all thinks alike might miss.
Diversity of thought, experience, and background is so important for any team that wants to stay ahead of the game, especially in today's constantly changing.
And once you've got that dream team together,
Yeah.
the real work begins.
Right.
It's about helping those talents grow, keeping them engaged, and creating opportunities for them to advance in their career.
Retention is a constant battle,
Yeah,
but it's worth every bit of effort you put in.
absolutely.
It's about investing in your people, showing them that their development matters to you,
Yeah.
and giving them the resources and support they need to really shine.
It's about building a culture where people feel like they're appreciated, that they're being challenged, and that they're excited to come to work every day.
Exactly. And technology plays a big part in all of this.
Yeah.
But like we said, it's not just about having the newest, fanciest tools. It's about having the right tools for what your team needs and making sure they have the training and support to use those tools the right way.
It's about helping your team use technology to be more productive and effective,
Yeah.
not be overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. And all of this rests on a foundation of culture.
Right.
A strong company culture is like the fertile ground that your sales team grows in. It provides the nourishment, the support, and the sense of belonging.
It's that unseen force that holds your team together,
Yeah.
that motivates them and shapes how successful they are.
Absolutely. Leaders have to be the ones to shape the culture by living the company's values, encouraging open communication,
Yeah.
and creating an environment where people feel like they're respected and that their ideas matter.
It's about setting the right tone from the very top and letting that trickle down through the whole organization.
Exactly. And remember, building a high-performing sales team is a process. It's not something you achieve overnight. It's a journey.
Yeah.
There will be roadblocks, challenges, and times when you feel frustrated.
That's true.
But if you keep an open mind, if you're always willing to learn new things and adjust, and if you keep your eye on the big picture,
Yeah.
you can build a sales team that not only gets amazing results, but one that thrives and continues to grow over time.
You want to build a team that's resilient and adaptable
Yeah,
and always pushing to be the best.
exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I
Uh-huh.
want to leave you with this. What's one little thing you can do today to start building a more supportive and empowering environment for your sales team? What's one action you can take to encourage a culture of growth, collaboration, and success?
That's a great question.
The journey starts with a single step. So take on the challenge, and you'll be amazed by what you and your team can accomplish.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope you found all these insights helpful and that they've inspired you.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your own experiences and any strategies you have for building a high-performing sales team. Share them in the comments below. We'd love to keep this conversation going.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.